Yeah, I don't need to hear. I don't need to hear any more of him.
No.
I've heard it. I've heard it a million times.
Wait, guys, let me just go outside. Let me just make sure all my cats and dogs are inside so
Okay.
immigrants don't eat them. No, we're good. There's no one lurking with like a giant cauldron and catnip.
That's definitely going in the podcast.
With a giant cauldron. I don't know why
Full
in
of
my
catnip.
head I formed this vision of somebody walking around with a giant cauldron.
Luring kitties.
I mean, if you wanted to be like more accurately racist, you'd be like, it's the Chinese that are eating your cats and dogs.
Yeah, right. At least put it in some kind of context where people could be like thinking twice. And like, oh, dear.
Yeah, instead of just saying some utterly insane shit.
Literally got the endorsement of a man who face fisted a bear, beheaded a beached whale, and took a picture of him gleefully eating the flayed carcass of a four-legged animal, be it a goat, a dog, or whatever.
Yeah, that he
has
chainsaw the head off that whale and strapped to the car was crazy. Like the family was recounting the story. They were like, oh, like the windows were down. So like the juices from the whale head were like flying into the car and smacking them in the face. And they were like, well, why didn't you roll up the windows? And they were like,
imagine your kids are like, Dad, there's whale juice getting in our face, but it's not for you to roll up the window. You're like, here, put this Safeway bag on your face and poke a hole in the mouth. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so if anyone's eating your pets, it's probably RFK Jr. All right, y'all ready? Hey, this is D Knight.
This is Carol.
This is Ty.
You're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast, where we also double as your neighborhood cat watch because apparently immigrants are eating your dogs and cats. Supposedly from, what did he say?
Oh no, an immigrant is sneaking into the camp. Why are you crawling?
I'm not getting on your live stream.
An immigrant is sneaking in to steal my cat.
Oh boy.
We also have
is that your roadkill fridge, Carol?
Surgery.
Is this the roadkill fridge?
Yeah. We also have a new co-host available. Yeah, apparently. We've got someone sneaking in onto the podcast to join the debate discourse. In case you missed it, there was a presidential debate. Apparently no one's going to be dropping out of the race this time, sadly, even though I feel like telling a gazillion lies over the course of an hour and a half should be a lot more disqualifying than sounding old and having a cold. But, I don't make the rules. I don't control the discourse. In that, I'm just here to tell you what the fuck happened.
Yeah, and some of us have quotes that sound so much like jokes that you wouldn't believe they were true. So when I make a joke about immigrants stealing and eating your cats, I want you to know that Donald Trump actually said that was happening. Was he even saying it was the border town? I believe that the town he was talking about was in Ohio, where people are having their cats and dogs stolen and eaten.
Specifically Springfield. We'll get to that momentarily. So first off, I'll just here's how I feel about presidential debates. They're insane. The biggest losers here are Americans. Theoretically, if you're going to have a media outlet host a presidential debate, supposedly, I would imagine it's to inform the public. But if you allow one candidate to endlessly lie with every single breath and word that comes out of his mouth, then you're not informing the country. You're doing us a disservice, the public. You're making us dumber. You're making the country worse. And you're normalizing some insane bullshit. But just in general, I don't feel like there's no correlation whatsoever between your ability to stand on a stage and argue with someone in 2-minute segments that equates to the ability to do the job of running the country. In Trump's case, we already saw him run the country and he ran it into the fucking ground. And Kamala Harris is currently the vice president of the United States. And you see what this administration is doing. A debate is so far apart from the actual doing of the job that it's largely meaningless.
And yet you should take something from the fact that Trump was excessively coached to be able to maintain a debate performance. And he tried to, have this presidential affect that he could only keep it for a few minutes before he was triggered. So I'm just trying to imagine if it shows even when he's extremely well prepared, he doesn't have the temperament
He's like
to last a few minutes in a presidential demeanor. And so what the fuck? He's not going to be able to make tough calls in real life situations. So again, while a debate performance isn't always indicative of how you'd perform, a shitty debate performance could be. Unless you're Joe Biden, that doesn't count.
No, Todd. So he did start off on message for the most part and semi measured, and that quickly gave way to ranting and raving and yelling at the fucking TV screen, which we'll have video clips of,
and the facial expressions, because you got to see it.
Yeah, you definitely do. But before we get to those clips,
well, have you ever seen one of those cheap inflatable sex toys? And you think of their mouth, and
I don't know where you're talking
about. It's just like a hole. I've seen like the cartoon sex dolls, like when they show them on
Carol, whatever you're into, we don't judge. Whatever you like.
Like on movies where they have something that
whatever.
Movies. Movies.
Homemade movies, Carol.
Yeah.
No, so before we get to those clips, there was this instance later in the debate where the moderator asked Trump about his comments that he said
they're also orange. Sorry.
Where he said the moderator said that Trump said that he didn't know that Kamala Harris was black, just found out that she was black, and that's because she just recently chose to be black, which is again beyond the insanity of not knowing the race of Kamala Harris, even though we've been talking about her being the first black woman in the White House in history. Like, it's also ironic because Trump paints himself so dark that, as you'll see in just a few moments, he and Kamala Harris are practically the same color. I just don't like that we accept this insanity as normal, to the point where we don't even mention it as kind of.
Well, it's a darker tone, but it is a hue not found in nature.
That is true. I do have a quick question though. Was she on a box or no? Because she's pretty tall then. Because I'm looking and I go, she looks pretty. I'm not seeing I don't know.
Wasn't he truthing about how there couldn't be any props or?
Yes, he goes, "You are who you are."
All right. So I think she's like 5'5" or something, and she does wear heels. Typically, so
well, she stands on her accomplishments, so she appeared very tall.
Not only does she stand on her accomplishments, she stands on the shoulders of giants. So she appears to be hovering over Trump at the debate. But so first of all, we have a clip of Kamala Harris making her way up to Trump immediately upon taking the debate stage, introducing herself in rather exceptional fashion.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Former president.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, power move. She went over there and invaded his personal.
Yes,
that's
exactly what I was
the
thinking.
Dominance. I mean, look, don't make too much of this. This is, amateur body language / psychologist over here, armchair psychologist.
Him. You can say it.
No, yeah, she went over there, got in his face, got in his space, and made it a point to show that she wasn't intimidated. And that theme continued throughout the debate, where she showed no fear of him whatsoever. But so early on in the debate, Trump was asked about his take on the United States economy and what he would do to help it improve. And well, it's like you can only imagine what his answers were like.
Prisons and jails from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see.
Yeah. So, in a question about the economy, he ended up rambling on to the point where he got into some kind of non sequitur about immigrants being let out of jails and insane asylums coming across the border to take black and brown jobs, including those of union employees. I mean, obviously, he doesn't understand how employment works.
He didn't say of those of union employees. He said, and also unions.
And also unions.
Just
There's going to be no unions because of migrants. They're going to
Right.
cease to exist.
no migrants, no cats. I mean, no unions. Damn it.
No, after Kamala Harris gave a pretty coherent answer on what her plans for the economy would be, and also,
And I'd like to thank the former president, Donald Trump, for setting the bar so low at cohesive. Go on.
well, after she gave a coherent answer about her plans for the economy, as you can see, Trump's response was just totally asinine. I hope like the media doesn't do that thing where no matter what insanity comes out of his mouth, that they try and piece it together and make it seem as though he made some semblance of
Do you know they are? You know they're going to go, Trump performs extraordinarily well. Are we seeing a new Trump? Trump looked presidential.
No, the
And
headline will
that's going to be
the
New York
headline
Times
will be
tomorrow.
Trump blames economy on immigration or something, even though like what he said absolutely made no fucking sense. But Kamala Harris, she managed to rebut all of Trump's insanity in just a short time.
I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Quickly, how is it possible that they're the same color? I don't understand. Look at that.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will
Former
Look at his
president.
face. Look at his face.
Yeah,
What's up? So you can like right under his eyes. Like,
I don't know.
I mean, mine are most people. It's like darker right under their eyes. And his are
I know, I wanna get
shades lighter.
So part of the question the moderator asked Trump was like, typically we do this thing where we ask, are you better off 4 years ago? And then he looked directly at Trump and was like, former President Trump, do you believe we're better off now than we were 4 years ago? And Trump had the nerve and audacity to say no. He was like, oh, the economy was at a record pace and we're doing this and jobs and blah, blah, blah. 4 years ago, like you couldn't go outside because you might die because Trump mismanaged the handling of the pandemic so fucking poorly. And he made all these. First of all, Trump said so many lies over the course of this debate that it's nearly impossible to fact check. You'd spend a 24-hour period just fact checking the 45 minutes of speaking that he engaged in because it was that many lies. But he had like these comments about, getting people ventilators. Actually, the ventilators that he procured didn't work. I would know because my mom's in the healthcare field and they could barely get the equipment. It took him months to get the PCP, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, and just did a horrifically terrible job. And not to mention, there was that infamous press conference where he told everybody to inject bleach. So yeah, I would say, considering the fact that they didn't have a pandemic response plan when he lost, and they were forced to leave office because the coup failed, and Biden had to pick up will just build up a response plan from scratch, including a vaccine rollout that Trump didn't even bother to try and organize. I'd say if anyone,
no, he took the credit for it.
yeah, Trump wants the credit for the pandemic. Well, you get the credit for the deaths, buddy, because you did a terrible job. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, if you just go back and look at where we were in 2020, like it was depressing. Cops were killing unarmed black people left and right on national TV.
Thank goodness that's stopped now.
Yeah, sadly, those numbers are still continuing in a similar fashion. Just people apparently have lost the energy to protest in that regard. But also, at least you can go outside. We have the greatest economic recovery of any country on the planet. That's all thanks to President Biden and Kamala Harris. Like, people assume like what the thing that Trump says is like, oh, after the pandemic, all of the jobs were people just going back to work. No, buddy. A lot of those companies ceased to exist thanks to the pandemic and the way it was so poorly mismanaged. There weren't jobs to go back to. We had to build a fucking economy basically from scratch. And it took 4 years, but Biden kept his promise and built it back better than Trump handed it to him. But from there,
even though they tried to shoot down Build Back Better,
they definitely did.
Yep.
They didn't want it built back. They definitely didn't want it to be better.
No.
Nope.
And they tried their hardest. They sent all their little goons in Congress to vote against it. And by God.
Well, I mean, credit to President Biden and his administration for getting it done.
Building it back better by any other name would still be Built Back Better.
Triple B.
Credit to Biden for getting all that done with the thinnest possible margins in Congress that we've ever seen. Also, so Trump was asked about his stance on abortion, and of course, just responded with utter lies.
The plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And
first of all, later he came back and told the same story, but he said Virginia the second time.
Well, that's because he got the state wrong the first time. Oh, yeah. Well, in case you missed it, FYI.
That was his explanation. So they asked for his stance. He said, if you're not going to support abortion nationally, why would you support this Florida 6-week abortion ban? And he said, well, basically he said his options were 6 weeks or murdering infants. And he had to vote for 6 weeks. There is no in between. And
in West Virginia,
he says it like with his whole ass, and we're supposed to just take that for fucking face value.
And what West Virginia had to do with the conversation, I have no idea.
No, he meant Virginia.
He meant Virginia. He was talking about an incident.
Okay.
Yes,
because I was racking my brain trying to think, who the fuck was the governor of West Virginia?
No, he just got
why do we care?
When did they have a Democrat governor recently?
He just got the state wrong.
Was
okay, do you remember? What was it? Was it Married with Children? With
Al Bundy.
Al Bundy, yeah.
Go on.
Would put his hands in his pants. So, do you remember the daughter?
Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah.
You familiar with the episode where they discovered, because of trivia, they discovered that Kelly had this uncanny ability to memorize rote information.
She was a savant.
I'm pretty sure you brought this up. Yeah.
Possibly, but there was this I guess the only hang up is that she was like a computer, and once there was so much RAM, once it was full, she would lose the information that she learned the earliest, so she could only learn so much. And if she learned a new fact, then she would forget the other thing. So it was they filled Trump's brain with so much stuff that when they told him about, the Youngkin comment in Virginia, he forgot and confused that, and all he could think of was West Virginia. That's he Kelly Bundy'd it. But Trump did get fact checked on that.
But then
insane.
he brought it up again later and said
Yeah, but
Virginia.
at least he did get he eventually got the state right. But
there was no acknowledgement of having said it earlier. So I'm like, oh, are you alleging that it's Virginia and West Virginia?
But
did this happen twice?
What Trump does, right? He just keeps reiterating the same stories over and over. Like, he made comments earlier in the debate that he just repeated verbatim later on in the debate. I guess it's some kind of strategy because he only has so much information in his brain to fall back on that he just repeats the same shit that he said. Because, obviously speaking for 45, 50 minutes in front of a televised audience it's a lot of time to fill. I would know because we do a podcast. But Trump did get fact checked on those insane abortion claims. So the fact checking or lack of fact checking did eventually go out the window because he just kept saying insane shit.
The plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month.
Whoop, wrong video. Let me try that again.
Did you notice? They must have told him only use one hand, no accordion.
No idea.
He'll put one hand on the podium and then he'll do the other hand like this and then like this. See, look at him.
No idea. But
let's watch.
Because he didn't do this.
Yes,
Was that the only surprise?
Here we go.
Do you think they
Maybe that
drugged
was
him?
a surprise.
Great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Yeah, there should have been a lot of that. I mean, I feel like technically the entire debate should just be the moderator sitting there telling you that, in every instance that Trump tells a lie, making it clear that it's a lie. Because part of what happens is if you're going to not fact check Trump and then live, you decide on certain instances that you're going to fact check Trump. Well, then what you've done unintentionally is legitimize all of the fucking nonsense and bullshit lies that he spews that you don't fact check because you've made the decision that we're going to call out certain things. No, call out everything.
I'm sure they could say like, oh, we couldn't possibly do everything. Well, like even then you could do as much as is possible because it's a ridiculous fallacy to say like, well, people might think some of, the other unchecked facts are true. Like, well, they'll think all of it is true if you don't check it at all.
What they did do is they would go, thank you, we need to move on. And then that was it. That was their pivot. But one thing about when she made that comment, the look on her face said, I can't believe I have to utter these words. There's no state that allows people to execute a baby after it's born. It was like, oh, this is what we're doing.
And it looked like it pained her to have to admit that was just a lie. But I mean, it was so egregious. I guess she didn't have an option. I don't know. But
what if the baby had committed a crime?
Being born?
Beyond that. So Trump was asked whether or not he would veto a national abortion ban if a bill hit his desk.
What if the baby crawled across the border?
Re-elected president of the United States. And well, here's his answer.
Idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D.
Congratulations to Trump on throwing J.D. Vance under the bus there, by the way.
And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
So the question there was, will you or will you not veto a bill on a national abortion ban if it hits your desk if you're reelected? Did you notice he never answered the fucking question? He spoke.
Oh
for
yeah,
like
I would have liked for her to have said when it was gone to VP Harris to respond, for her to say, we actually have had such and such billion forgiven, and 4 or 5 million students have had their debts. I would like for her to just throw that in like a little 3-second blurb of that, and then go on to rebut the abortion thing. Because there's a lot of people that don't know if they don't have student loans anymore. My loans, well, one of them was forgiven. So
yeah, for the record, if you do have student loans, you might want to go check that, because Biden did actually get like multiple billions of dollars of student loan debt forgiven. Now, he was planning on rolling out more student loan debt forgiveness, but a federal judge blocked some of that here over the last day or two. But I'm sure Biden's going to try and find a way to work around that. But again, like it's
just like the audacity of Trump to pretend he has any empathy for the people who wouldn't get their student loan forgiveness. Like, he's like, oh yeah, and it just stinks that she's
like
stringing them along because of me, because I'm never gonna fucking help you fuckers. I don't give a shit about you, and that's so sad that you still believe
how incredible is it that like Biden and Harris are trying to help people who are struggling to pay this insane debt that racks up because like student loans are predatory. And then Trump is like, not only will you not get your student loan debt forgiveness under Biden and Trump because of, judges he appointed. He's like, I'm never going to help you bitches. Like, it's fucking bananas.
But he's like, but the real villain is the Biden-Harris campaign for making you think that you had a shot against me.
I never told you had a shot. At least I was honest.
Yeah, I mean, it would make more sense perhaps to blame the judges, but we'll get to the weird ways in which Trump places blame just a little bit later here. But then we have Trump making I can't even really describe the level of insanity and some of the claims Trump was making. But we have a clip for you here.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the...
And he's referring to a question that he asked Kamala Harris about immigration, and she pointed out the fact that there was a bipartisan bill in the Senate that would have addressed a lot of Republicans' border concerns, but President Trump, I'm doing the fucking Trump. Former President Trump went out of his way to lobby all the Republican members of Congress not to vote for the bill, so they ended up killing it.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
If you've seen videos of Kamala, yes, right. If you've seen Kamala Harris rallies over the course of the past month, and you would know that actually that's an insane lie. Her rallies are the most popular political rallies we've seen in generations.
And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
All right. So that's an admission of guilt. That's what Trump does. He busses people like it. If you go look at his rallies, typically the social media posts and whatnot, it's the same people at every single rally. He buzzes them in. And then sometimes he puts up the Craigslist ads or whatever, asking people to come show up to his rally and hold a sign for like $20 an hour or something like that.
Well, now it's down to 10. It used to be like 75.
Well, Trump is broke. We'll talk about that once we wrap up with the debate here.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of...
That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing the...
We would never go into World War III under my administration because we'd surrender to everybody.
He doesn't know what to do without that other hand.
We'd surrender to everybody.
There's millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
They're eating your pets like Chinese food. General Tso's dog.
The people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Hunan kitty cat.
And it's
I
a
would
shame.
like to invite
as far
our
as
listeners, if your
rallies
cat or
are
dog is
concerned,
gonna be-
as far as the reason they go.
Oh, there he goes.
Sweet and sour Nemo.
Free the hand.
Is they like
Free
what
the
I
hand.
say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of.
Yeah, look, this is insane. I don't understand. I don't know where this originated, but these fake right-wing stories about, what was it? Was it Guatemalan immigrants or Venezuelan immigrants or something like that in Ohio, supposedly eating people's pets?
Haitian.
Haitian.
It's the Haitians. Yeah.
Venezuela sent all of their criminals to the United
Yeah,
States.
they
and
emptied
now
their
it's super
asylums.
peaceful. Yeah, that's
And
what it means when you
Haitians
seek
are
asylum.
eating
What does he think? They're like doing voodoo or something? Like sacrificing your
that's the
pets or
racist
something? I don't
part of
understand.
it.
Yeah,
is
I
that they're
can't. I
trying
don't
to
even know
put
the
it into
connection.
the-
Yes, I don't.
Into the
Oh,
hoodoo stuff.
I just thought they meant that there were a lot of people who were hungry and they were stealing cats
No,
and
but
dogs
the
off the
thing
street,
is-
and he would be bragging that like, all right, so can we feed them people food?
Well,
Like,
they were trying to push.
where the fuck are you putting them? You dumped them in a fucking Ohio?
They were
Like,
trying to push. That,
I know what happened here.
What?
They just recently watched Weekend at Bernie's too, where like
or the Beverly Hillbillies. I
where
don't
the
know.
hoodoo like reanimated Bernie's corpse and he was like dancing to the. Yeah, that's what happened. I don't know what like these claims are insane and that
That
a
was a good
presidential
movie. I mean, I was
the first one was
thing is,
good.
It all
The second
started
one
from
was
one freaking.
I was
Facebook
very young
post.
when I
It's just
enjoyed
crazy
that
from a
movie.
crazy Facebook post.
so
and
it
then it went
originated on
from there.
Facebook. Yeah,
It started with one Facebook post where some random had posted that her friend's daughter said her cat was missing and that she saw the neighbor skinning the cat and eating it. Now,
okay, it's entirely possible that one insane person did skin a cat and eat
they
it.
did. It was
And
an American person though.
It doesn't
But
matter.
it was not in Springfield either.
Again, RFK Jr. fucking defiled a bear and dumped the carcass in the middle of Central Park. So anything could happen in the United States. Why are we blaming Haitian immigrants? I don't just.
Well, there was a black guy that was
Haitian
like,
immigrants gave
of this guy
RFK
holding a goose
brainworms.
walking, and then that's when they added the duck when they had Trump in the water hugging the kitten and the duck. That Benny Johnson was posting that meme. But the thing is,
Yeah, okay.
that
So in case you
post-
missed it, there is this AI generated image of
God.
Trump standing in the water, and he's like, he's got his arms around like a kitten and a duck in a pond, which makes no sense. Why would you have a kitten in a pond? But also,
Because he would fucking drown it. He's taking it to drown and then
considering that video last week where Trump was responding to E. Jean Carroll accusations, where he admitted basically that he sexually assaulted another woman in like 1979, or at least he's been grabbing pussy since 1979, you would think they would want to, cut back on the imagery of Trump grabbing pussies, and ducks as well. I guess he likes to anyway. But yeah, that a presidential candidate on a national stage is feeding this insane shit to the public. That should be totally disqualifying. Like if President Biden having a cold and not performing great meant that he had to drop out of the race, then this dude should be barred from ever holding office anywhere ever again in the history of the rest of the history of the United States. This is beyond absurd.
guys, breaking news. I don't know if you saw on Instagram that Taylor Swift has officially said she'll be voting for Kamala Harris.
Well, there goes Trump. Yeah, he's cooked. Yeah. Shout out to all the Swifties out there.
How dare, basically, like, I'm freaked out by AI. What the fuck? Just want to be totally transparent that I didn't say I'll be voting for Kamala Harris.
Well, you know what? I
Research your
honestly think
issues,
that maybe
register
because
to vote.
football season just started and maybe she didn't want to distract from Travis, if that makes any sense. Like having all this attention.
I don't know. I feel like if anything, she was waiting to endorse Vice President Harris until football season started, right? Because, I don't imagine like this is like totally, it's not like some kind of scheme or anything. But I would imagine that they make these decisions about her public announcements in terms of when it would get the most attention. And clearly when football kicks back up and, the Chiefs played the Ravens the other day, rematch from the AFC
She did
playoffs
it right
last
after
year.
right after the debate.
Yeah, she was probably, wait until football kicked off. Here's the debate. It's a pretty good launching pad for when people are paying attention to politics, for her to put out her endorsement of Kamala Harris. I mean, we all knew it was coming.
That's why Childless Cat Lady is currently trending, because that's how she signed it. That's how she signed her long thing.
Oh man, shout out to JD Vance for being the worst possible political candidate that we've ever seen. And
Posted
that's in a world
21 minutes ago. It's got 1.7 million likes approximately. Okay, 1.68. I don't know how to round up with the millions.
October 1st is Governor Tim and JD Prance debate. So that's gonna be good.
Yeah, Walls is going to eat him alive because he's a terrible public speaker. He's terrible at any kind of confrontational interaction. He's terrible at dealing with human beings. He can't even order fucking donuts. He everything that surrounds politics in terms of being like the public spectacle and the human interaction and all that good stuff. JD Vance is the worst I've ever seen. And we saw Ron DeSantis. So yes. Beyond the insane claims about immigrants eating your pets, just more insane commentary from Trump here.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich.
Harris responding to Trump's insane comments.
Coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Yeah, I know I'm exhausted by his bullshit. She did a really good job there. Not only did she tear his ass a new one, but she brought it back to like what her plans for the future are. So she's really got this nailed down in terms of like, let's get away from the old, move away from the past. Let's go into the future. We've already seen what Trump has to offer, and it's total destruction. And here's a way forward that's hopeful and joyful. Ty, you muted just in case you didn't know that. Okay, I guess no one has any more comments on that.
Before she went muted, I heard something about pork chops. So I think she may be having some sort of dinner-related discussion.
You saw the picture I posted, didn't you?
In our private
looking at Taylor Swift and her kitty cat. Pretty kitty.
No, I had posted, I made some Italian pork chops and they came out so good. And then I made some mashed potatoes and I topped it with feta. And that feta added such a nice little flavor to it. It was really good.
Well, thanks for rubbing it in, Ty. I had a sandwich.
Yes, the dry rub was...
I got to send you guys a picture of where we're going to be staying in Merida. Our trip is completely paid for.
Well, lucky you.
I
I
had
am
pierogies and kielbasa.
stuck at
Well,
home.
because we
and not
haven't
going
been
anywhere.
drinking, we haven't been wasting money at the bar. So we've actually been able to do shit that we need to do, like get David's passport and pay for the trip for my cousin's wedding. So that's nice.
Exciting. Well, beyond that, so we have Trump made some off the rails comments about all of his criminal cases in response to that, saying that they were all weaponized by Biden's Department of Justice, even though Trump was indicted in Georgia by the local attorney there and also in New York by the Manhattan DA. Like, you know, institutions that don't have anything to do with the federal government or President Biden. Kamala Harris had a response, to say the least.
Weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris.
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Weaponized, please.
We got
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get.
Speaking of
This sounds just like his debate with Hillary Clinton. Oh my God! It's just like when she suggested he was a Putin puppet, and it says like the same. It's like the same. Script.
yeah, he's
Oh my
like,
God.
no, you're the puppet.
You puppet, you puppet, not me puppet, you puppet.
Speaking of Russia investigations that went nowhere, they actually went somewhere. If remember, less than a week ago, the Department of Justice indicted those Russian agents that were paying tenant media that employs, right-wing nut jobs like Dave Rubin and Tim Pool. Not to mention they seized all those Russian websites. Not to mention that guy from the New York FBI field office who supposedly was investigating Trump's connections to Russia, but appeared to try and cover him up. That guy's going to jail for half a decade for his role in being a Russian asset. There was that guy that they tried to use to frame Hunter Biden, who ended up getting indicted because he was a Russian asset. I mean, just like the list of, the collusion was real. Oh, and, of course, Trump even decided to bring Paul Manafort back to the RNC convention a few weeks ago. But yeah, sure. Russia is a hoax, I guess. Apart from that, Trump was asked whether or not he had any regret about any of the actions that he took on January 6th. And of course, this response is clearly insane.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
All right, I'm not going to
Yeah,
let
but
him...
he also said he was going to go too, right? Like, what is the value
Yes,
of
he
his
did.
fucking word? Where was he?
He did
He's
try
like,
and
go
go
ahead,
to
I'm
the...
right behind you.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it from my. I'm just gonna watch it from my couch. It's
I'll be
totally
right there.
the same.
I'll
Okay,
be right
I'm not
there.
going to let him rant on and spread lie after lie, but yes, he did say he was going to go with him down to the Capitol, except he got kidnapped by his own Secret Service, who knew what he was up to and wouldn't let him do that. But also, he didn't address why it took him 2 hours to finally tell the people who were attacking the Capitol to go home, even though he was watching it on TV. And he was informed by his personal aides that, the crowd was trying to hang Mike Pence, that the Capitol was under attack, that Nancy Pelosi was asking for help. He says his thing.
Because they probably conditioned him that he can't answer because I fucking wanted to, or like, how dare you ask me that? Fuck you. Or,
Don't forget Charles Flynn, Mike Flynn's brother,
Yeah.
held off, and also the memo by the acting Secretary of Defense that went out
That
to the guards. We was
only
like,
he could approve. National
only
Guard
I
response.
can give you the approval.
Right.
Yeah,
and then Trump says this
exactly.
thing where he offered 10,000 National Guard troops to come protect the Capitol. It's not true. It never happened. There's no documented evidence. There's no phone call. There's none of that. And it's not on Nancy Pelosi or, Mayor Bowser or anyone else to accept or to even decline that offer. Trump is in control of the National Guard. That's just how the DC National Guard works. Also, Trump says, like, Ashley Babbitt died. Where'd she die? Where did she get shot at? Where was she at? What was she doing when she got shot? You go look up that video and you'll wonder why they didn't shoot more Ashley Babbitts.
And what did Trump say should happen to rioters?
When they start looting, we start shooting.
Yeah, I mean, there was even this incident where in private during 2020, during the Black Lives Matter protest, that Trump asked the military why they couldn't shoot protesters, even if it's just in the leg. And then here he is complaining about Ashley Babbitt, who was trying to assault Congress, and the Secret Service was defending themselves. And he said no one else died. That's actually not true. We had numerous DC police that didn't survive the encounter with the protesters.
No one on their side, he said. Like, whose side? Like America.
And there were plenty who, though they are not dead, they are permanently disabled, be it mentally, physically, or both.
Yeah.
Their lives have been completely upended. But I do wish that, like, in my mind, when he was like talking about Minneapolis, nobody was arrested for burning down Minneapolis. Yes, actually they were. And they were all Boogaloo boys, white nationalist, supremacist agitators, number one. And number two, let's talk about that phone call to Tim Walz where you told him he did a great job when he shut things down, when he did send the guard in.
Also, Minneapolis didn't burn down. There's also that.
He said it still hasn't been built back up, D. It's just ashes still 3.5 years later, which is going to come as quite a shock to those who live there.
Yeah, crazy. But Kamala Harris did just destroy Trump for those comments that he made about January 6th.
Question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back.
Yep.
Does he have jaundice? Sorry.
No.
I don't know.
On his color.
Is that the color? The official color?
And that's the color of the spray tan that he uses, John?
Yeah. Or whatever.
No, I don't know. It's spray paint, but yeah, I just.
His appearance is very distracting.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
I'm
also.
sorry to keep bringing it up. It's just so gross.
It is, and not only is his appearance gross, but so are his comments. Because if you think the January 6th comments were insane, which they were, I got news for you. There's more coming.
You said that sarcastically, you know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it.
That was in response to Trump being asked, because he said, a couple of times over the course of the last couple of weeks that he actually did lose. We lost 2020 by a hair.
Back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders. And we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't.
Immigrants can't vote. You have to be a United States citizen, and you have to be registered in a lot of states.
Bad election.
They make it nearly impossible for non-citizens to even attempt to vote. And even if they did, the votes wouldn't get counted because they're checked against the registration.
And they would do so at enormous personal risk. Sorry.
That as well.
And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm. Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
Judge looked at it
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing.
Actually, a lot of judges said they also didn't have evidence.
They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system
not a technicality.
where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you, we have.
No, he won't. He's lying. But,
why is he trying to downplay standing? It's that's literally a threshold issue to whether.
Yeah, does he obviously does not know what not having standing means.
I don't think he knows what standing means at all. It's just like the legal
way
of saying
you're
the appropriate person to bring a case.
The court told us we were sitting.
You have some interest. You have some interest in the case. Personally.
Beyond that, Trump he says like the 75 million votes that he got is more than any other sitting president's ever gotten. Yeah, but you got fewer votes than the fucking competition. Biden got 81 million votes. That's why you lost.
There's no way they told him if he got the same number he got in 2016 that he would definitely win.
Yeah, I mean, he got fewer votes in 2016 than Hillary Clinton. He only won. The real technicality was his electoral college win, where he got 3 million fewer votes than Hillary Clinton and somehow managed to get into the White House. But it didn't end there, as Kamala Harris called out Trump earlier in the debate, Trump tried to trash Biden's handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal, and Harris made sure that he didn't escape that unscathed.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And The president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans.
He invited the Taliban to come hang out at Camp David on September fucking 11th.
A place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president,
She was about to say this motherfucker.
invited
I know
them
she likes the F word.
to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President.
And before we comment further, I'd just like to get Trump's response to that. And, well, you'll see why.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't.
So he surrendered to the Taliban is what happened. If you were wondering why the Afghanistan government fell in such a spectacular fashion the way it did upon the commencement of the withdrawal of American troops, is because Trump cut out the Afghan government in the United States, rather in the
He
negotiations.
abandoned them like he did the Kurds.
Yeah, he did the same thing to Afghanistan that he did the Kurds. He gave the Taliban all their troops back, told them the time frame with which we would withdraw, so they had all the time to prepare to take over the second we were gone. And that's exactly what happened. So never let Republicans tell you that any of the casualties that occurred due to the withdrawal of American troops were because of President Biden. No, it's because of Trump. He made absolutely sure that withdrawal would go as poorly as possible. It was organized.
And don't forget,
from the beginning.
he literally refused to share any information about it. He had no plan. And he actually admitted in some speech he gave that somebody had posted on X-Chan yesterday or today, where he takes full credit for being the one that started the withdrawal and that basically taking credit for everything.
Yeah, and don't forget, like, this plan to withdraw, thousands of troops from Afghanistan. And I think the original date was somewhere along like March, but it
was May 31st.
Oh, it was May. I'm sorry. Yes, May. So, but this negotiation took place after he lost the election. So he's making these drastic decisions about American foreign policy after the election's over, but not instituting any plan. So in order to create a mess for the incumbent president, rather the incoming president, to have to clean up. And that's exactly what happened.
And if you remember, he was like doing all of this under a shroud, while we all wondered where the fuck he was and what he was doing besides trying to overturn the election.
And he drew down the troops.
There's no transparency at all. Well,
I know you said it. From like 13,000 to 2,500, despite the National Security Council saying we needed at minimum 4,000 to extract everyone safely.
Yeah,
and then again, he has the fucking chutzpah to come in and like at the end be like, oh, and then 16, not that I'm trying to downplay the lives of 16 human beings and our service members, but like, how many people did he set up to be killed in Afghanistan as soon as we withdrew? And he's going to be like, oh, and how many people has he indirectly or directly responsible for their death? And he's like, these 16 people, I met their families. Like, you don't give a fuck about them or anybody. Like, stop.
No, and
really pisses me off.
The only reason he even cared is because it was an opportunity for a photo op.
This really grinds my gears.
I totally understand. And it's entirely possible that if we had kept 10,000 troops in Afghanistan and also instead of negotiating with the Taliban, negotiated with the Afghan government and kept the timeline about our withdrawal secret, it's entirely likely that the Afghan government wouldn't have collapsed. We could have kept them safe and kept them in a position, to defend their positions and give them an opportunity to plan like a post-American Afghan government. Yeah. And instead, just like the Taliban started negotiating with these local municipalities in order to like commensurate the takeover. The second United States troops left, and then over the course of, days, the entire Afghan government fell because Trump set it up that way. But
so how are we supposed to believe his other things? Like when they asked him about Ukraine?
Carol, he lies. He be lying.
I figured
that's
you were
the
going to
whole
show that.
point of this podcast.
That's the explanation for everything, Carol.
No, I wasn't. I was going to make a further point. Now I'm going to remember what it was shortly. So you guys keep talking. No, he said when they asked him if he thought he wanted Ukraine to be victorious in the war, and he couldn't give a straight answer even on that.
Oh, that's true.
Basically, what he said is he would have all these conflicts. They asked how he would resolve these conflicts.
Surrendering.
This was the Netanyahu one, actually. How would you negotiate with Netanyahu? And he's like, none of these conflicts would have happened. I'm like, so your fucking strategy is like having a time machine and going back in time and like preventing these things, but you couldn't even like what you've shown is that you in the past sabotaged these efforts deliberately.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Lying, you say? Is
this
that what it's
thing where
called?
Yes, lying. So he says this thing. We're like,
if
I had been president, these conflicts would have never occurred. But he can't explain to you the mechanism by which they would have never occurred. Now, obviously,
time machine.
But no, if he had been president, so like the situation in Ukraine, obviously the solution there would have
surrendered.
Yes, he would have made Ukraine surrender to Russia.
That's why he can't say he wants them to win. He just kept saying, I want the war to be over. Yeah, yes. We all know what that means. Putin wants the war to be over, too.
I'm glad you understand how this works, Carol.
I'm not just good for jokes.
So I would say overall, given the circumstances, the situation, like with presidential debates where Trump is one of the candidates, you're typically set up to fail because typically you require these people to speak honestly and tell the truth and not ramble on or lie maliciously for an hour and a half. But if you're not going to fact check the candidate, you give Trump like an incredible advantage because he will just lie and say anything. But all that said, I think Kamala Harris did extraordinarily well given the circumstances. I mean, she did as well as anyone could do on a debate stage with Trump under these circumstances where he's not being fact checked. I mean, this is what you would expect out of someone who is running as fantastic of a campaign as Harris is running. I think it's going to do her. We should see probably a post-debate bump for Harris in similar fashion as we saw a post-debate bump for Trump after the previous debate with President Biden. The caveat being
that was more of a President Biden slump.
Yeah, well, that's also the thing.
I'd go with your take, Carol.
Fair enough. But part of the reason, the caveat being the media is not going to sit here and hammer Trump for endlessly lying and being insane and saying ridiculous shit and being a criminal and being a convicted felon and being a fraud and, sexually assaulting.
He was just joking about the cats.
E.G. and Carol. Yeah, they're going to say it was a microcosm of
what he
Trump's commentary on the threats of immigration. About yes, they'll explain it away for him in a way that they would never do for any other candidate, let alone like what they did to President Biden after a subpar debate performance, where Trump also did the same exact shit in that debate as he did during this one, which I feel should be totally disqualifying, but the media will never present it that way. At least you have us for that. But yeah, before we wrap it up and get out of here, do you kids have any closing thoughts? Either of you?
I thought that the debate was a positive. I wasn't sure if Harris had something to gain from this, but a lot to lose, because he's predictable but unpredictable too, if that makes any sense. And I wasn't sure with, them adding Tulsi into the mix, and I don't trust that snake, but I think that VP Harris did really, really well. I think those independents and those who are more center-right Republicans, moderate to conservative, because MAGA's anything but anybody not a MAGA. I'll just leave it at that. But also who isn't a Democrat. I think that this will really help her have a stronger position with them. She showed herself to be level-headed. She didn't get flustered by his insanity. She dismissed it like you do a little child who's 5 years old and talking smack. I'm going to run away and I'm leaving. I ain't never coming back. Okay. She kind of treated him like that. And that, I think.
Yeah, she went straight up Kamala Harris on him.
Yeah, she did. Exactly. And I think that was a really, really good move, because she showed herself to be calm and steady in the midst of his flurry of lies. She didn't take the bait, but he most certainly did, which shows that if he were in a situation, like what if he came up against one of these dictators that was just like, get out of here, you fat fool. You know what I mean? And he like goes on a long Twitter tirade in the middle of the night as president. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the juxtaposition of them both, not just because she's younger, but because he's legit insane. And she let him show himself. And while she did address some points, and I do like that little blurb she made about her and Tim Walz, because I didn't know that she was a gun owner. I knew that he was. So I think that was a nice little slided in there.
I do believe he is no longer allowed to own a firearm now that he's a convicted felon. I could be wrong about that.
Yes, he cannot. He cannot. But I am very, very pleased with the way that the debate, I feel a lot better. I was getting anxious leading up to this debate, not because I doubted her, but because I just wasn't sure if there's only so much a human can take.
The media, and you never know with these media outlets, including especially ABC, because they've been soft pedaling Trump for years now, whether or not the fix is in the same way it was for Biden. So
I can totally moderators. Yeah, I thought the moderators were fair. I thought they did a good job considering the circumstances.
They weren't fair, and they didn't do a good job, but they just did better.
I don't agree with that. I feel like they did.
The bar is so low. What you're doing is you're comparing them to the bar, and the bar is so low that they exceeded
I'm comparing them to the last moderator.
That's what I mean. So the bar is so low that it was almost impossible to not exceed it, and now you've given them credit for doing less than the bare minimum.
That's fair, but I still disagree.
Yeah, like they weren't tough. Like it would have taken a lot of restraint to not make at least the number of like snappy.
They're still going to be made to seem unfair.
I don't care if it seems unfair.
The right's still going to.
I don't care what the right thinks. And the pundits think. I care what how the audience interprets her words. So if they're pulling out her policies from it and taking away, the possibilities for their future instead of like.
Well, it's extraordinarily difficult for them to do that when she presents, clearly stated, effective, thoughtful, policy plans, and then Trump is just uttering mumblefuckery, and then post facto the media is creating policy out of nowhere based on some nonsense that Trump says, which I'm sure they'll do. And it's, again, just one of the numerous ways the media continues to fail us. But no,
I just hope that those people were watching, because after I said that, I'm thinking, well, most people will just hear what those very same pundits have to say about what happened. Huck.
Bingo. But like you
Watch
said,
it.
Ty, they did do better than last time, even though that's not saying much. So I guess if we continue with this rate, by the time we reach 2060, the media will have finally learned how to do this. And that concludes this episode of Pardon the Insurrection.